Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. It's always nice to kind of talk with the tech community in Portland and have an opportunity like this to present. So, um, like like we were just saying here, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get here. All right. Can everybody see my presentation there? Breaking in?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, great. All right, thanks. Well, yeah. So as Kizzy was just saying, I would like everybody. So essentially, biggest thing is I know breaking into the tech community or any kind of job, right? Any kind of new industry or anything that takes a required skill set is hard because competition is tough. So, as we move along here, please just any question that pops into your head, just throw it in the chat box. I mean, it doesn't matter what the question's about as long as it's pertaining to career advice or anything that pertains to you getting into your career within technology, software engineering, or whatever avenue you're going to take into your career. Just throw it in the chat box, and then we will get to that at the very end. So don't be shy with your questions. The more questions, the better, and I will take a stab at anything that I can answer. So just as we're moving along, just go ahead and just pop them in there. So yeah, so EdgeLink. If I don't know how many of you are familiar with EdgeLink. So EdgeLink is a technical staffing firm headquartered right here in Portland. We were founded in 2003 out of the garage of our co-founders, and our co-founders are still with us, and working hard to make EdgeLink continue to grow. We have offices now in Denver and Salt Lake as well, and over the last year, we've seen a huge uptick in remote work, and so we've really expanded. So while we have feet down in those cities in Portland, Denver, and Salt Lake, we do recruit across the country. We have clients across the country, and we've seen a huge uptick, as I said, in the remote work due to the COVID pandemic. We do specialize in the recruitment of technical professionals for local software and IT clients. In our 18 years of existence, we have placed over 2,000 candidates in jobs. We have two separate divisions: contract, contract to hire, and then a direct hire full time. And myself personally, I work on the direct hire full-time division. I started as a recruiter at EdgeLink in 2017 after a career I started my career in finance, moved on to being a business owner for 6 years, sold my business, got into software sales, and then that led me to recruiting. So I've jumped careers quite a bit over the last 16 years or so. But I think I found my real niche in recruiting and working with individuals such as yourselves and trying to find a career and get that career growth that we're all looking for. I do manage our Denver team. I do live in Portland, and I'm very familiar with the Portland area. That's where I've lived forever. So I do live in Portland. My network is all Portland, but I do manage our Denver team. And so, things that we recruit on, all things technical, essentially. I mean, software engineering is probably our bread and butter. I would say software engineering roles are about 75% of our work. So whether it's back end, front end, full stack, QA, test, whatever it might be. We also spend a lot of our time working on cloud, DevOps, and infrastructure, software and IT support, technical sales and solutions engineering, and then leadership and executive level. And today I'm going to kind of walk through some of this stuff and how they can be avenues for yourselves. I believe most of you are probably going down the software engineering track, which is fantastic, but getting into a job is hard and it's extremely competitive, especially now because you're going against people who have industry experience or maybe have been coming from a traditional engineering background, got a CS degree or whatever it might be. And so it's super competitive. And so, trying to get your foot in the door can be hard. And so we'll go down those paths that you can take to make that happen. So topics of discussion today are going to be, search tactics, resume development and career trajectory, interview technique, and then we'll get into the Q&A session, which will come out of the chat box. So yeah, without kind of any further ado, we'll kind of get rolling here. So with search tactics, that's kind of like the basis of, it's time for you to go get a job. Either you're coming out of the tech academy, or you're looking for your second or third job in tech, but it's always trying to maximize your time and how you can search. So I think the number one thing you have to do when you're looking for a new job is really knowing what you're good at and sticking with it. And I think the big thing here is, when you are searching, make sure that your personality is going to fit the job, right? I think culture and I think team fit are probably the number one things. I mean, because if you're applying for a job with a technical job, you must more than likely have those skill sets that are technical, right? Those hard skills, but it's really the soft skills. So really know what kind of person you are, take a personality test or take something that will kind of, where am I going to fit in? I think always apply for jobs that you really want to do, or for companies you really want to work for. It could be the technology, it could be, if you're a front-end engineer, maybe your specialization was JavaScript React, JavaScript Angular, or whatever it might be. Maybe you want to work on a certain product. Maybe you like marketing, or maybe you like, healthcare, or maybe you like, aerospace, whatever it might be. But I think having an idea of the industry you want to work in and what you actually have a passion for can really develop something well for once you get to the interviewing stages. So if you're coming from a sales background, I know a lot of individuals who are in tech academies, right? You're coming from a previous career. Maybe you were in the service industry, or maybe you were in sales or something, right? You're coming from different paths. And if you have a passion for something, and you're interviewing for it, that passion kind of shows to the interviewer and to that company, like, oh, wow, they know their stuff around marketing, or they know healthcare, or they like nonprofits, or whatever it might be. So have something when you're applying for jobs. Don't just throw resumes out there. And then being strategic in your search. And this is kind of where I think a lot of candidates, when they're looking for a job, right? They're not currently employed. They might be coming out of school. They're coming out of a tech academy. They're not strategic, right? I think, I talked to some people and they're like, yeah, I've thrown 75 resumes out there to 75 jobs. I'm like, oh, well, where have you applied? I don't know. I just saw a job link on LinkedIn that looked cool and I threw my resume at it, or whatever it was. Well, when you're strategic in your search, you can really focus on it and kind of make it your job to get a job. And kind of the way I break it down to candidates is, over a 3-day period, focus on 5 jobs and 5 jobs only. So if it's Monday, and you go out and you're searching for a job, or you want to apply for jobs, find 5 jobs that you're gonna apply for. And once you've identified those 5 jobs, do research before you apply. So do research on, you can go to LinkedIn, or you can talk to people in your network, or whatever you might do, but do the research. Find out who the hiring manager is. Find out who maybe the internal HR recruiter is who's working on that job. There's all sorts of different avenues and different technologies out there that can help you find that and do that research on those 5 jobs. And then once you've done your research and you've found out that information, that's when it goes to applying for the job. So you're going to apply for the job. And then once you apply for the job, that's where the key is. So you apply, you want to do an immediate follow-up after you apply. So whoever you found out was the hiring manager or the internal recruiter, shoot them an email and just introduce yourself. Say, hi, my name is Michael McCormack. I just applied to your XYZ position on LinkedIn or on your website. Just want to introduce myself and let you know that I applied. Sometimes they'll get back to you, sometimes they won't. But remember, this is 5 jobs in 3 days. So after you've applied to those 5 jobs, you do this, immediately after you apply, you do this follow-up. The very next day, if you haven't heard back, you write another email to that individual and say, hey, I introduced myself yesterday. Just want to know what the timeline, right? You want to ask what the timeline is on choosing candidates who they are going to interview. And if you still haven't heard back for the timeline on that 3rd day, it's okay to just write one more follow-up and just say, I really am excited about your company because of this. Throw out an interesting topic of why you're interested in the company, and you want to really know about what that timeline is because of your interest in applying. When you have a focused search and when you're focusing on just 5 jobs, you really kind of put your time into it and you're not really worrying about anything. You're just focused on those 5. And then basically you start that over on Thursday, Friday, and then keep doing that cycle. But I think when you just throw resumes out there and you just apply to, a blanket approach, you don't know what you're applying to, right? You're just kind of applying. So if you make it a little bit more focused, I have found that there's a lot more success, and especially if you do the research and the follow-up with the company you're applying to, because it shows your due diligence that you did, and not only finding the hiring manager or the recruiter working on it, you're also doing the follow-up, which shows your interest to that hiring manager or to that recruiter. So that's big. And then, another great search tactic is using your network. And I think a big thing here is having your LinkedIn up to date. And I'm going to kind of show you a little bit of a tactic that we do on our end, and how to use our network. And hopefully everybody here on this call has somewhat of a network. And I hope that everybody on here has a LinkedIn profile, because 99% of the recruiters or 99% of the hiring managers you're talking to or going to be applying to have a pretty up-to-date LinkedIn profile. And I always find it prevalent to try to make those people connections. So I'm going to stop sharing this really quick, and I'm going to break out of here, and I'm going to share my LinkedIn real quick. All right, and boom. And I believe everybody can see my LinkedIn now. Is that correct? Okay. So when I'm searching, I'm going to do a search and I'm going to find somebody. So Ben, I'm just going to use this individual. I go to my LinkedIn page and I'm going through my network. So Ben Finklia, he's a friend of mine. He's in my network. He's very well connected. He's been in the Portland area for, he's lived here since, 80s, went to elementary school, high school, college here. He's very well connected. So what I'm going to do is I go to my first connection and I click on this 500 plus connections tab, and this will help me find my network. So I don't know if you guys do this as a tactic of trying to work your network, but it's very effective when you're trying to find a job. So you go to your network and you pick out somebody who's well influenced in the area. And I'm going to say, okay, well, Ben Finklia, he's got a lot of connections here. How do I want to break it down? Well, I'm going to say, all right, Ben, I am going to go do a search. I'm going to hit all filters here. And I'm going to do a search here. I'm going to say, I'm going to look for people with director titles, decision makers. So I'm going to go show results. And Ben's got 179 connections that are directors in the area. And I'm going to go through here. And I'm going to say, okay, cool. Well, I like Nike. This guy's a senior HR director at Nike. Maybe I want to break into Nike. Maybe I'll ask Ben, hey, Ben, how well do you know Tom Golka over at Nike? Let's see what else we got here. Find some other stuff. Just kind of thumbing through. It takes like 10 minutes to go through a profile and find out who their connections are. But it's kind of a nice thing. There's another one at VMware. She's the director of strategy and transformation. Now, she might not be a direct influencer on the job that you're applying for, but she's a director at VMware here in Portland. She might know somebody, and Ben obviously is connected to her. I'm going to ask Ben, hey, Ben, how well do you know Sarah Conti? I've been trying to get into VMware for a job that they have open, and I think it might be better if I had maybe some sort of a referral to get in. So using LinkedIn, like all the different little kind of ways you can go about your network, but using your network and doing simple LinkedIn searches to see who your connections are connected to. Portland's not a very big town. It's very tech focused. You would be surprised if you did these kind of searches on LinkedIn with your network, how many people are connected to decision makers in the tech community. So this is another way that you can use your network. I'm going to stop that, and I am going to go back to sharing my PowerPoint here. All right. All right, so that was the network. There, and then on top of it, think of it long-term. When you're doing a search or you're finding yourself looking for a job, don't think about the here and now. Yes, you want a job here and now, but think about where you want to be in 5 years. What's your career going to look like in 5 years? Everybody wants that instant gratification. Everybody wants to get paid. Everybody wants to get a job. But really, what's your career look like in 5 years? Because that's really what the ultimate goal is. That's really why you're at this tech academy right now. It's not to just get your first job, it's to get your second and third job where you're actually going to be making some really good money, where you're going to be really connected in the tech community in Portland. And so that's a big deal. And I think the biggest thing is just getting yourself into a company and proving yourself. And this kind of leads me to like this next thing when you're searching for jobs, right? So, I would say a lot of you are looking for software engineering roles. But when it comes down to it, when you're working or you're applying to a software company, a product company, any kind of tech company, really, they have multiple roles that aren't titled software engineer or software developer or whatever the title might be, that can actually get your foot in the door and a lot easier than somebody who says has 3, 5, 10 years of experience in software engineering. And for individuals such as yourself who have come from a background in maybe another industry or maybe in a sales industry or whatever it might be, but you're breaking into the tech industry, these job titles are excellent job titles to get your foot in the door. So if you're not familiar with these job titles, these are just samples, but an implementation engineer. An implementation engineer is an individual who is, very communicable, has, a really good booming personality, somebody who gets along really well with people, and you're also going to have an opportunity to code. So what happens with an implementation engineer, you have your software engineering team that is building the product, shipping it to the customer, and an implementation engineer is actually going to be on site or implementing all of the features of that product. So you're not actually writing the code to develop the product, you're actually just implementing it into the ecosystem of your customer. And that's where you can actually learn hands-on skills in writing JavaScript or writing Java or C# or whatever your skill might be, but you're not just getting right in as a software engineer. This opens up the avenues for you. Same with the technical support engineer. Technical support engineer is after the product has been shipped to the customer is using the product, maybe they have bugs or maybe they have questions. You're on that side of being a technical support. A ticket will come into you and the customer says, hey, I have this bug issue. You're going to be able to write up a code or do something to fix that bug for them. Another great way to get in. Solution engineer and technical account manager. These are more on the sales side or customer service side, but you're kind of the go-to individual for helping them with their roadmap on product updates or implementing a new product. If you're in sales or you like sales and you are proficient with a language or with a software engineering background, this is a great way to get in because these are jobs that need to be filled and they need to have a special skill set, not only as the soft skills go, but also the hard skills. And then a client engineer. A client engineer is somebody who is working with a customer and just kind of like their customer service rep, but on the technical side, you're constantly in touch with them, making sure that all the features are working. But these type of roles are great roles to get your career started. These kind of roles, especially like the implementation engineer, technical support engineer, client engineer, they don't require any experience in software engineering. They just want to know if you can code. Are you able to write C#? Are you able to write, JavaScript? Can you do a SQL query? Those kind of things, and this gets your foot in the door. So when you're starting to do searches for your new jobs, do searches for these kind of roles, because these are the kind of roles where individuals with a little bit less, career experience in software development can get their foot in the door, prove themselves, and have that ultimate goal of becoming a software engineer for that company. Hiring managers really look at that kind of stuff. So that is search tactics. Resume development. Structuring your resume around projects you've done. I highly suggest for individuals who are just trying to break into the career, always have a link to like a GitHub or a portfolio or projects you've worked on at the academy. Always sharing a couple of links with a hiring manager shows, what kind of work you've done. I know they love to review code. Hiring managers are saying, oh, they're too junior. I can't go that junior. Or this is an entry-level position, but I've got, 25 applicants. Well, maybe showing code or sharing code on your resume, a link that they can go to will allow them to see what kind of work you've done. Tie in behavioral personality traits of the job. I mean, like I said earlier, culture is everything when a hiring manager wants to make a decision, like how does that person fit within our team? So like when you are doing your resume, if you've done, experience in operations in the past, or restaurant, or whatever your past career was, tie it into how that can benefit you in your tech career, right? The better personality you have, or the more experience you have in past experiences, definitely will help you. It's not all about the technical stuff. At every resume, I highly recommend having a little bit of a summary about yourself, for individuals like you all who are coming from a tech academy. You're obviously changing careers, right? So tell a little story in that summary. I managed restaurants for 10 years, and I just loved computers, and I knew I wanted to make this career. And so I decided to get into tech, and now I'm trying to break my career. But in that summary, tell your story, right? You have a unique story. Whereas like somebody who's coming from a computer science background, went to university for computer science, knows they're going to get into technology, their story is like, hey, computer science graduate looking for a career. That's their story. But your story tells a lot more than somebody who's coming from out of school, because you have a background in life. And I think life experiences are just as important, if not more important, than what a degree says from a university. So use those life experiences against your competition, because more likely than not, you have those life experiences that are vital for decision makers when making a hire. Lead with your strengths, right? Make sure what you're going for is what you're doing. So if you're going for a React job or an Angular job or whatever it might be, make sure you tie that in. So if at the Tech Academy, when you're doing your resume, make sure you point out the certain projects that you've worked on and what your key contributions were to the project. Upgraded a UI component to this application or whatever it might be. And always mention the technology in the bullet points. Always say used React, JavaScript, and HTML to update the application for this client or whatever it might be. But I think the more you put those keywords of what technologies you're using and tie it to the project you're working on is always going to help. And then only list jobs that add value on your resume. So, I think operations, business-to-business sales doesn't have to be in technology, but if you're coming from a business-to-business sales background and now you're getting into technology or software engineering, maybe you were an operations manager, maybe you were a finance manager, maybe you're coming from accounting, whatever it might be, those are the kind of jobs that you want to add on your resume. But if you were, a parking lot attendant downtown at Portland State, that job doesn't do anything for you. If you were, so relevant jobs, they don't have to be tech jobs. They have to be jobs that were adding value. So a management position, business-to-business sales, I think those kind of jobs are the ones that need to go on your resume. And as a rule of thumb, usually on a resume, if you have 5 years or less in your career, a one-page resume will do. If you have 5+ years on your resume, go ahead and make it, or in your career, make it a 2 to 3 page resume. That's okay. Because if there's relevant jobs that give the story of you, I think that's always important to show a hiring manager. So, and I know I'm probably going pretty fast here, but this will be sent out to everybody. I think we're also recording it. So if you guys all have any questions or anything about what we're going over here, I'm always open to, I'll give everybody my email address as well, and we can I can share other tactics for resume development, or I can share resumes with you. And then interviewing techniques. I think interviewing is probably the most important thing of getting a job, right? You have to do the search, you have to have a good resume, but once you actually get the interview, that's telling you have a chance to get a job, right? And so we've all done interviews. They're nerve-wracking, they're tough. You're always kind of doubting yourself, and until you actually get the answer of yes. And so I kind of break down the interviews to pre-interview, which is the most important part of the interview process, during the interview, and then post-interview. So pre-interview kind of does, it's a conglomerate of things that are going to help you get the job. So number one, do your research on the person you're interviewing with, right? So you have an interview with Sally Jones over at XYZ company. Do your research on her. Do your research. Get to know her a little bit on LinkedIn. See what she's done in the past. See where she's coming from. And then also do a lot of research on the company as a whole, what their product is. By looking up, going to their website, seeing who their customers are, seeing what their products are, see if there's any like news. Maybe they got some funding, or maybe they just got a new customer. but do the research on the person you're interviewing with and the company as a whole. And that'll allow you to start generating questions that you want to talk about during your actual interview. And all of this should be done. You should take, if you got an interview on Monday, you should probably take, a good 3 hours to do some pre-interview work. That'll help you get prepared. And phone call, there we go. That'll help you get prepared for your interview. And then every interview kind of has the same questions that are soft skills, right? So these are some questions here, just some samples of what you can expect in the interview. Like almost 99% of the time, these kind of questions are going to come up. So like, tell me about your greatest accomplishment on the job. Tell me about a time where you were required to work with a difficult person. How did you handle that situation? What was the outcome? What was the biggest mistake you've made on the job? How did you handle the failure? What do you do to get what do you want to get out of your next job? You can expect these questions. Maybe they're not going to be the exact ones, but at least it gives you kind of an idea of what kind of questions you'd expect. You're like, oh yeah, I prepared for that. And the more pre-interview work you do there, the better. I also like to think outside the box, right? Like I look at this question right here, like tell me a time where you were required to work with a difficult person. That question comes up all the time in interviews. My answer to that question is I am that difficult person. Like I love to work with teammates love me. I have a lot of recommendations. I have a lot of referrals, but I am that difficult person sometimes because I want to get stuff done. I'm a hard worker. I add a lot of value to a team. I want to get the job done. I know what, I'm always about the end goal. You can just say like, but they wouldn't expect an answer like that. But if you phrase it in a way that says, oh, interesting. He's not a difficult person, but he sometimes can be because he likes to work so hard or he's so dedicated to his craft. He's dedicated to his job, so outside the box answers always work as well. More, research the job. I talked about researching the person and researching the company as a whole, but research that job thoroughly. Expect questions centered around your experience, specifically with the language, framework, tools that you're wanting for that job. And it goes back to, your search criteria and knowing what you do. Prep, on the pre-interview, prep on how you will explain project you've worked on. I used XYZ language on an application right? So if they ask a question like, okay, yeah, so you have experience with React. Can you give us a little bit of an example of where you use React? Well, some people will actually say, oh, I use React on this job, and they'll stop right there. Well, you're not going to get the job if that's what you got, because I know you use React. It says it right on your resume. Give me a good summary of what that is. So prep for questions that are going to be centered around your technical skills and how you would answer those. And then, always prepare at the very least, 4 to 5 questions revolving around the team, the projects ahead, what they see you working on. Ask me if you'll have a mentor. What does the leadership structure look like? What are some goals or gaps that they're seeing? So all of these things are pre-interview and they help a ton. I said it takes about 3 hours. Well, I think 3-hour investment in a pre-interview prep is probably worth a lot if you're able to get a job that you're gonna love and get paid for. And then practice. Find a friend. I know at a tech academy, especially, you have mentors and you have teachers and you have colleagues or you have peers. Say, hey, I got an interview on Monday with this company. I know this is everything I know about it. Would you mind a prep interview with me and help me get prepared and get that prepared for your colleague or your peer? Give them like, hey, here's what I want you to ask me. Here's how I'm going to answer it. But doing that practice is vital. During the interview. So first and foremost, I think most interviews nowadays are all via Zoom or via Google Hangout or Teams or whatever it might be. I've only seen one in-person interview in the last year, and it actually is expediting interview process. What used to take maybe 3 weeks for an entire interview process now only takes 2 weeks. But just because you're on a Zoom call or just because you're doing it virtually doesn't mean you shouldn't dress professionally. So I think during the interview, dress professionally, present yourself, present the best you. Just because you're at home doesn't mean you can just wear a t-shirt. Like, you want to present your best you and your professionalism. Speak clearly, precisely. When you are doing they ask you a question about your career or a project you worked on, you don't want to ramble on about it. just give short, but you don't want to give those short answers like the 2-word answer, but be precise, give a good 3 to 4 sentence answer that answers the question. Answer the question in 3 to 4 sentences and move on. The more you talk, the more they forget about what they even asked. So try to keep the answers precise, speaking clearly. Another great thing is kind of, this is a mental edge to it. Don't think of it as an interview. I know it's really hard, but approach it as a conversation like you're talking to a friend about what you do, right? So if my friend asks me what I do, I'm going to tell them. I'm going to be able to give them a really good explanation of what I do for a living, and what I like about my job. But when I'm in an interview and somebody asks me that, I might be too nervous to actually give that answer. So kind of thinking about the conversation. Most hiring managers and most people who are doing interviews, they want to hire you. They need to hire somebody. And why can't it be you? And I think that's the biggest thing is, how is your communication style? How do you collaborate? Are you somebody they can get along with? Would you add value to the team and the culture? Those are huge things. And the better you can articulate that, the better you have a chance of getting a job. And then always ask questions that piggyback off each other. So when an interviewer asks you, do you have any questions? Maybe they had said something about the team, and you can say, you mentioned earlier that the team is of 10 engineers. What does that team actually look like? How many of them are front engineers? How many of them are back end engineers? They'll give you that answer. And then once they give you that answer, say, so are they working collaboratively? And they'll say, yeah, they're working together on this and that. And then you can say, so what are they currently working on together? What projects? They'll give you that answer. And then you can ask another follow-up question. So like, what gaps are needed in covering this project? Is that why this position is open? So if you're trying to always ask follow-up questions to their answer, or ask a question that is centered around something they told you earlier but didn't quite elaborate on. So going back to earlier in the interview, saying, hey, you mentioned this earlier in the interview, and I just like to learn a little bit more. Can you tell me about this? And that'll get that conversation started. Now they're talking about their team. They're not even worried about the interview anymore. They're answering questions about their team. They're talking about themselves. People like to talk about themselves and what they're doing. And that gets that conversation kind of more into that conversation approach instead of an interview approach. Post-interview. So this is kind of where you're following up on the interview with an email, thanking them for the opportunity, and elaborating on what you learned and why you think you'd be a great fit. So as soon as your interview's done, shoot an email to the hiring manager, whoever just interviewed, say, thank you very much. I really appreciated the interview. This is what I learned during the interview, and this is why I think it'd be a great fit. I'm looking forward to next steps. After you write that email, shoot an email to the CTO or the VP of engineering or the leader of that organization, and expressing, hey, I just interviewed with so-and-so on the team for the XYZ position they have open. I was very impressed with their demeanor, and I'm very impressed with the product and company. I hope I have an opportunity to work for you. So you got 2 emails out on the follow-up there. One thanking the interviewer for the time, and then one to the leader of the organization saying, wow, I was very impressed with the interview. That kind of gets the leader of the organization kind of hooked of like, who's this person? And then follow up with the interview within 48 hours. So once you've interviewed, usually it takes a couple days for people to get back to you. I would just shoot an email the next day or the day after and say, hey, just wanted to follow up and just let you know how excited I am about this opportunity. I continue to do research on your company and the products that we talked about the other day, and I really am excited about this. And so that's kind of the post-interview, right? But I think one key takeaway you could take away through this entire presentation is research and follow-up. The more prepared you are, the better you have an opportunity to get a job. The more follow-up you do and the more you get connected with people on a personal level, gives you that opportunity above the competition as well. So that is the presentation. So I will stop sharing this. And stop sharing that and kind of get here. And I think we have some questions on here. And I know it's tough on these virtuals, but hopefully everybody was able to take a little bit of information from that presentation and how it works. So let's go through these questions real quick. And if anybody else has any questions, go ahead and just type them in here as we're going. So Vicky, yeah, you asked if I recruit on other tech companies in the in other areas beside Portland. Yeah, I mean, especially over the last year, right? Our offices are in Portland, Denver, and Salt Lake, but we've seen a huge uptick in remote jobs, and so we've gained a lot of clients across the United States looking for remote workers. And so, like Austin, for example, yeah, we have Austin's a good example. We have 3 companies that have offices in Austin that are hiring, and so yeah, Austin's a good example of that. We do have clients in those areas.
Great, thank you for that.
Yeah. Is a boot camp enough to land a decent job? I think the question is, are you enough to land a decent job? Really, it's not really about where you go to school or what boot camp you went to or what you're doing. It's about you and how much you buy into your career. Like I was saying, I think a decent job can be described in so many ways. It can be described financially, it can be described work-life balance, it can be described remote, whatever a decent job looks like to you. The answer is yes. Anything is sufficient enough to land a decent job. I think the biggest thing for you is to be honest with yourself, right? Coming out of a boot camp at your first tech job, maybe you were making, $80,000 in sales in a prior career. Well, you're changing careers and you're gonna have to take some lumps on the salary side. So don't go in there thinking, okay, I want to look for $90,000, right? Be honest, take your lumps and prove yourself, because anybody that hires you is going to look at you as a junior engineer or a junior member of the team, and they want to see results. And so once you actually do get a job, that's your time to prove it. And like I was saying, like, go for those implementation engineers, technical support engineers, those jobs where you're actually going to be coding. So you're going to be doing your software development, but they're jobs that most software engineers aren't going for. Those are the kind of jobs that I think are very, very doable for individuals such as yourselves who are coming from a boot camp who might not have that background in software engineering. So think outside the box when you're looking for jobs. Hopefully that answered your question, Kevin. What does a typical recruiting interview cycle look like? Every company is different, but really, it's usually a 3 to 4 step process. It's usually an interview with the hiring manager, just to kind of get more of your background, team fit, ask questions. That's typically the first interview. Then the second interview is usually either like a pairing session with another member of the organization, like a software engineer from the team. You'll do a pairing session online, or they'll have you do a take-home assessment or something like that. And then from there, you're usually going to do a panel interview that consists of a couple managers from maybe other teams, other individuals from other teams. But you can expect a panel interview of like 3 to 6 people. That can be between 2 and 6 hours. And that's where it's going to be behavioral, personality, technology, going over your code, and then a final interview. But typically, 3 to 4 interviews is average, and it usually takes about 3 weeks from beginning to end on what the interview cycle looks like. From a recruiting standpoint, I'm going to get people, right? So people aren't applying to my jobs. I'm going to find people. And usually when I target someone, I'll shoot them a message, say, hey, you look great for this job. This is why you look great for this job. Love to chat with you, talk to you about your background. And I do a screen with that individual, just talk to them about their career and what they're looking for. Lenny asks, I'm having trouble landing interviews. What's a good strategy to get that first call? Lenny, I think the PowerPoint, I know I went through it fast, but I think there's a lot of points in that PowerPoint that can probably help you. I don't know your specific situation of what your background is and what kind of jobs you are going for, or what your language of choice are, or whatever it might be. I don't know what you do, Lenny, but I do know that, using those strategies, maybe it's your resume, or maybe it's doing the, before landing the interview, it's that follow-up and doing the research and, reaching out to a hiring manager before you apply or when you apply. That stuff goes a long way. So if you're not doing that, I would start there. Once you apply to a job, find out who the hiring manager is, find out who the recruiter is on that job, shoot them a quick email or a LinkedIn email, and just introducing yourself, telling them, I just applied. This is why, I'm very interested in this position. Please let me know if I can get an interview. So that could be the strategy, but, go through the PowerPoint. And if you have questions, like I said, you can email me. anytime, and I can tell me your specific situation. I might be able to give you a little bit of direction on that.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Joseph asked, what portfolio projects should one prioritize to provability? Also, what are some you should not undertake? I think if you've worked on an application, I think that's a big thing. So like, this is the finished product. So if you've even built your own website, or if you have helped on a website or helped on a product for somebody, pointing a hiring manager or a decision maker in that direction, those are the kind of stuff in their portfolio. I think a big thing right now, though, is GitHub. I think GitHub is very useful because it's open to the public. You can share your GitHub repos. And it shows your code, right? What does your code look like? Is it clean? Are there bugs? What's it look like? And I think that's a big thing. So if you're going for software engineering jobs, have a good GitHub portfolio, right? Write some code, do open source projects, do what you want to do on there, but that gives people an idea of what your code looks like, and then you can share that code with somebody. Either have a link on your resume for it, or you can even just shoot off an email to somebody who you might be applying to and say, hey, I applied to this job. Here's my GitHub repo. I got some JavaScript projects on there. I also have some Java projects. Go ahead and check it out. Let me know what you think. Ask them for what they think about that. So,
thank you so much.
Yeah. Liam, you have experience from 98 to 2000 in the tech industry, but from 2018 I worked in the music industry. What's the best way to integrate that old experience into my last experience of tech experience on a resume? Is it even relevant since I have a huge gap? I would say it depends on what you were doing back then. I think it is relevant. You've been in your career for 20 plus years, so you could have a 2 to 3 page resume maybe. Your experience there, I think that's a big thing, but I think I would have that on there. But I think the biggest thing right here is, your personality, who you are. You have life experience. Life experience is big. Like, people love life experience, and they like leaders. They like people who are mature in their career. They like people who have done stuff, right? They don't want just the person who can just come in and code. So I think a big thing for you, Liam, is you have a lot of life experience, and share that. And I would put that on your resume. And then obviously what you've done over the last year or two, getting back into tech, always have that at the forefront of the resume.
Thank you.
Yep. Get a ton of emails and requests to connect from recruiters on LinkedIn. Should I accept all of them or reply to all of them, or what is the best way to proceed? No, you should not reply to all of them. You should see what they're pitching. A lot of recruiters like us, we're very small, right? We have 30 people in our organization. We're very, very targeted with our recruiting, but there's also very large recruiting firms out there, and they're just pinging spam everywhere, right? And they might not give you the time of day. So if you're getting a lot of emails and requests to connect from recruiters, I think the biggest way to decipher that is, what was the message to you? Do they have a job for you? Are they just looking to connect? What are they wanting in this connection? I would accept the ones that say, hey, I have this job, or hey, your career or your background in this looks great for this job. Do the ones that are more personal and they have something to offer you. You could connect with everybody on LinkedIn. It's okay to connect with them, but the ones that you should be spending your time with are the ones that have something to offer you. Like, so if they're not sharing it, probably not the best use of your time. A lot of people are just looking to connect and they're not there. But if someone has something to offer, especially a job in a message, I definitely think you should reply to that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sharing examples of resumes that you found were interesting and effective would be really valuable. That's a statement, James. Excellent. Yeah, I can do that. If you want to shoot me an email and just tell me like, everybody on here can shoot me an email and let me know what you're doing, and I can share resumes that are interesting or kind of similar backgrounds to you. I've worked with, I've probably worked with about 20 individuals from tech academies and placed them in jobs. And so I can definitely share some resumes with people with similar backgrounds coming from like a tech academy and coming from a different industry with you.
Thank you. I missed your email address though.
I'll get it to you here at the end. I have not given that out yet, and I'll type it in here for everybody. There you go. That's my email address. It's in the chat box now. I've seen a few job postings looking for 1 year experience, coming out of technology and may not have as strong skills as 1 year experience. How can we compete with this? Yeah, some recruiters do. They specialize in entry-level positions. They specialize in this kind of stuff with their clients, right? Usually it's with larger organizations. Recruiters, like the larger houses, like cyber coders is a big one. I can't even think of who, I mean, there's a lot out there, but biggest thing for you all when you're looking for like a job with 1 year experience and coming out of tech academy, maybe you're not as strong as somebody who's coming from a computer science degree and they have 1 year of professional experience. You're right, it's tough to compete. The biggest thing is you, right? Your personality, who you are, what you add outside of the technical experience. That's a big deal. So, and to portray that without any verbal communication is hard. And that's where that research, the follow-ups, shooting an email to somebody, that's kind of going to set you apart because a lot of people do not do that. So if you're going up against a CS grad who has 2 years of experience professional and they're going for the same job as you, they're going to apply. But I guarantee you, they didn't shoot an email to the hiring manager. They didn't shoot an email to the recruiter introducing themselves, telling them why you applied. That gets you to the forefront of their mind. And then doing another follow-up like that if you haven't heard back within 2 days. The more you make yourself visible to the people that matter in that organization, the more likely you might get that interview. Joshua, hope that helped. Should I reveal personal details during interview? For example, I'm looking for a job that to be closer to family. Would that work against me? No, I would say if you're looking for a job closer to family, I would just be applying to either fully remote jobs or jobs within that geographic region. You know, so like if the job's not remote, then I probably wouldn't be applying to it because if it says specifically, hey, job's here in Portland, has to be here in Portland, well, you know, you're probably not going to be able to take that job because you want to go back to family. So to, again, apply to jobs that you want to take in the area that you want to live in. You know, it's about you, right? It's about you. And I think from personal details, be honest. Like it's not going to hurt you. I mean, if you know, but be honest with them. And but I think the pre stuff is big, like target areas you want to work in or the geographic region you want to work in, and then that can help you get away from that. How hard is it for a person living in the EU with a degree in CS to get a job in the USA? Do you know any approximate accepted percentage? Any idea about the visas? Thank you. Good question. So this question is obviously sponsorship, visas, H-1Bs. I mean, there's a lot of companies out there that take these on. There's a lot of companies that don't. The larger, you know, Fortune 500, enterprise level companies, global wide companies, they're the ones that are probably going to have these type of jobs, especially ones that are in the EU and in the USA. There's a lot of companies out there. Find those companies and apply to those. And, you know, more likely than not, those are the ones that are going to allow you to work in the USA while, you know, being from the European Union and having a visa. I don't know an acceptance percentage on it. I mean, it really just depends. Like if you're applying to a job that they don't sponsor, which happens a ton, you probably got a 0% chance. But I would go with those enterprise companies, larger companies, and that's your best way to go about that. I think that's all the questions on that chat. Does anybody else have anything? You raise your hand and talk in person if you have any other questions or anything.
Yeah, there is a raise your hand icon in the bottom footer of the presentation.
It looks like Vicki Jones has a question.
Yes, I do. Can you hear me okay, Michael?
Yes.
Great. You mentioned about sending emails to recruiters. What about the idea of calling them up? Would that be considered rude, or if you've got a name and a number, can you call them up instead, or is that rude?
I mean, I don't think it's rude. I think it's fine if you call people. I mean, if you can find the number though, I mean, it's hard to find numbers unless you got like a Zoom info or something that you can get the numbers. It's tough to get phone numbers because a lot of, not only are companies working remotely, so it's most likely got to be a cell phone number. It also, usually you're only getting like a corporate number, not with a direct line to that individual. So I would say phone numbers are really hard to go about, and you're probably going down a steep hole. So I think email or LinkedIn mail is probably the best way to go about getting a quicker, a response. But if you have a phone number, go ahead and try it. I don't think that's a problem. Like, just call and introduce yourself, Vicky. I mean, put yourself out there, right? There's no harm in putting yourself out there. The bottom line, the thing they're going to say is either no, yes, or thank you. And
Sure.
if they say no, you're in the same spot you were 5 minutes before you called them. So not a big deal. So put yourself out there. Don't be afraid to do it.
Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I see another hand raised from Joseph O'Malley.
Yeah, hi. I was just wondering, what would be considered rude? Like, what are some things to avoid? Like, how do I follow like good etiquette?
In regards to what?
Talking to recruiters and people that place you in jobs.
It's okay to be rude to recruiters like myself, but internal recruiters, you got to be nice to them because they hold
Will
the keys
the
to
word
everything.
spread though?
No, yeah, internal recruiters. So like, I would don't go overboard, right? I think, like I was saying, in that path to your job search, right? Do your research, apply to the job, and do a follow-up. That's step one. That's great. I think it shows, you've done your due diligence. It shows your passion or your interest in the job. And then if you don't hear back within 48 hours, go ahead and ping them again and say, hey, I just wanted to ping you again. You can, I appreciate your patience and my persistence, but I really do want an opportunity for this job. Please tell me what the timeline is, and then just leave it there. If they don't get back to you, then they don't get back to you. Don't email them every week. Don't email them every day. But I think a follow-up after you apply, and then a follow-up a couple days later to see what the status is, and that should be good. If they don't get back to you, they don't get back to you. And then, but whoever you talk to on the phone, or if you ever get anybody on the phone, be nice, be cordial, don't put off, and don't be like, it took you a week to get back to me. Okay.
Right.
Sorry. See you, buddy. Right. So yeah, don't do it that way, but be persistent, but do it in a way that's professional.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I see another hand raised from Howard.
Do you have an idea of what percentage of these kind of jobs get filled by resume searches, and how many because somebody on your LinkedIn gave you a personal introduction, or maybe not LinkedIn, maybe it's that's some other personal introduction, as opposed to applying through the interview process?
Well, I think if you get a personalized introduction, you give yourself a fighting chance. I think that's usually a personalized introduction, especially with a recommendation from somebody that's close to that person. 80% of the time you're going to get an interview, or 80% of the time you're going to talk to somebody internally, right? And that's the biggest thing, is like, hey, you just want to get on the phone, or you just want the opportunity for an interview. So if you can go through your network, you have a much better chance of getting that. I don't know the exact numbers, but I believe it's in the 80 percentile of a recommendation versus just applying online. When you just apply online, or you are, just kind of going through the regular ATS, the percentages drop drastically. I mean, we're talking 10 to 20%. Does that answer your question, Howard?
I gotta get my mute off. Yeah, well, yeah, kind of. I'm just, and I guess I'm wondering, like, how much. I know you're saying be really targeted about who to put applications in for. I know if you just broadcast them out, they don't go very far. If you just spam them out there, they don't seem to go very far. But
they don't, and that's why I was like, that personalized way, or that personalized approach, where I was saying, like, over a 3-day span, just focus on 5 jobs. Right? You're going to apply to 5 jobs. You're going to shoot off at least 10 emails on the follow-ups. And you're hoping that, you're giving yourself a fighting chance. If you got 5 resumes out there, you've written 10 emails, you're hoping that one of those will follow up with you, right? I mean, I like your chances when you go about it that way. So that's probably the best way to go about that. But the follow-up, the persistence, just sticking your head out there, right? Just go out there and do it. It's okay to to sell yourself, right? You're looking for a job, go sell yourself on it. How are you a boot camper?
No, I'm one of those people who was hot in technology many years ago.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
and then I had a couple of decade period where I did other things, and now I'm kind of trying to figure out how to get back into it.
So so I would say, okay, you're into music, right? Well, there's a lot of music companies out there that look for software engineers, or because everything's gone digital these days. So Howard, you got, tech experience from 20 years ago. You got into music, man, those are your passions. Go mix those passions and go find like 50 companies that are just focused on like music, maybe like online training or, maybe classes or, whatever it might be, and put your two passions together, mix them up and see where you can go. But if I was you, I'd focus on my passions and try to find a job within tech, within the music capacity.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. We can keep
I think
going.
we got another question.
Yeah, I got nothing but time.
Yeah, there's one in the chat.
Oh, from Joshua? How valuable are coding? Yeah, how valuable are coding projects to recruiters? Is there certain ones that pique their interest more than others, or is it just to see the structure of the code? So the recruiters are not going to be reviewing your code. I don't know the first thing about a line of JavaScript code. So I just know how to talk it. I know what that language does. I know what the UI is. I know everything it is supposed to do. I don't know the first thing of how it's actually done. So recruiters, internal and external like myself, we're not going to be reviewing your code. That's where that hiring manager goes to. So that's where the hiring manager is going to come into play. You want your code in front of a technical person. Those projects are like the GitHub stuff I was talking about. I think it's important. I think it's really important because, first and just be honest, right? The first thing I'm doing is when I'm recruiting, right? If I see somebody who's been out of a boot camp for, 3 months and they're looking for their first job, I don't know how they would do against somebody who has been spending the last year and a half, year and a half in a professional experience. I need to see your code and compare it to somebody who's been working on a product or working professionally in engineering to set you apart. So I think your code, sharing your code or sharing a GitHub link on your resume goes a very long way, especially if you're confident in your code. If you're confident in your code, that's going to be a great way to get yourself a call. You're welcome.
All right. Do we have any more questions?
I think Arlo popped a question in the chat there.
Yeah.
He said, what impact does working for a startup that make it have? And Arlo, you have a very cute kitty cat, by the way.
So you worked for a startup, they didn't make it. This last year, it's happened all over the place. It's happened more than it's ever happened before in the tech boom over the last 20 years. A lot of companies had to go out, and you're talking those startups that are, 5 to 15 people. They had a great product, but the funding wasn't there. That's usually why a startup doesn't make it, is because they just didn't have the financial backing or the funding, and they went belly up. Shouldn't have an impact on you as long as you're not out of a job for a few years, right? I think if it's within the last year and a half, you're fine. But I think that professional experience you've had is great, and it's not your fault that you don't have a job anymore from a startup. It's their fault, and any reasonable individual should be able to see that and know it wasn't your fault, unless you were the CEO of the company. Arlo, if you're talking, we can't hear you. I see you chatting there with your lips, but I can't hear it.
Yeah, and your microphone is on, or it was on too. I don't know what's going on.
You can throw it in the chat, Arlo.
Yeah.
To talk with your fingers. Well, last chance for questions for Michael, y'all. I know that I learned so much. I took some notes. Don't tell my boss. And I want to thank you for giving a really great presentation. There's definitely some stuff in there that I hadn't really encountered before that I think can be really useful for your job search. Someone asked in the chat if we can connect with you on LinkedIn.
Yeah, go for it. Send me a message though. When you connect with me on there, just send me a message, say, hey, I was on the Academy. Because sometimes if I don't know who you are, I will decline a message. So make sure you send me a message. I think that's great. When you're connected with people on LinkedIn, it always pops up and says, do you want to send a note with this invitation? I think it's always great to send a little note. So just, always send like a sentence like, hey, sorry that you worked for so-and-so. What a cool company. Let's connect. But always have something on there that gives their interest a little bit. Because if it just goes blind and I don't know you from anything, you have a 50-50 shot of connecting with me.
All right. Well, thanks again, Michael. That was wonderful.
Absolutely.
Thanks for everyone that attended. And we will hopefully see you at next week's Tech Talk. I think we're going to be doing another kind of a career placement, job placement, Q&A type situation. So bring more job placement questions. Yeah.
And please send me an email if you have questions or want me to look at your resume, or just give me a little background on yourself before, and connect with me on LinkedIn. I will shoot this. I'll shoot this PowerPoint over to Kenzie so you can share it with everybody who attended.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's my email too. So if you do want to get that PowerPoint, shoot me an email. If you end up without this email, any of the emails from the website will work too. It will eventually get to me. But I am Kenzie at learncodinganywhere.com. So yeah, that's great. Thank you so much for that. We will also put the recording of this Tech Talk up on our YouTube channel. So I can post that link as well.
Sweet.
And yeah, lots of places to come and get this information again.
Great.
All right, give me just a moment here. Oh, of course. And there's the YouTube link.
Awesome.
And I'll give anyone a second to just click on that and save it if they want to before signing out. But I think this is goodbye.
Yeah, just a quick note: the YouTube replay of this talk will be up on the channel after 6 p.m.
Because Rick is a boss and gets stuff done.
I do.
Great.
Hey, Michael, that was a really good talk. Thank you. Really good presentation and really good information.
You're very welcome. Anytime, any kind of other topics you ever want me to discuss, let me know. I'm always available to do something on Friday afternoon. It's a great time to my week's pretty much wrapped up by the end of the week. So willing to do anything you guys need me to do.
Oh, I'll be reaching out to you.
Okay.
Appreciate that.
All
You're
right.
on my list now.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks, everyone.
I know.